What is dhikr exactly in Islam? The concept of dhikr as we understand it today as Muslims became so watered down from what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. We took the hadith that says, oh, do this dhikr 3 times or 40 times, for example, and then we just watered down to subhanallah, 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 astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. This is exactly what we see in the masjid. But this is not what the Prophet ﷺ did, and this is not what Allah said in the Quran. The concept of dhikr, and when you do dhikr truly, like the way that Allah described, it is a life-transforming concept. When you move with dhikr in your heart, and I'll tell you how exactly from the Quran, your heart enters a state of complete tranquility. You're literally like moving in flow. The majority, and wallahi man, I'm not exaggerating, the majority of the obstacles you face on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to be stressed about. They're just going to be things that you can move aside and then continue on with your life. It's really like, it's truly an empowering state to live in, and I'll break it down inshallah here. So what is dhikr exactly? The word dhikr, it's translated usually as remembrance. The concept of remembering something that you forgot something and then remembered it, that's called tadhakkur. Recalling something that you forgot. Dhikr, on the other hand, is completely different. Dhikr comes from the verbal source fa'il, which literally entails an action. Dhikr means active remembrance of Allah. The closest English word I can find that captures the essence of dhikr is presence with Allah. You moving in dunya with a state of presence of Allah. And Allah tells you exactly how to do that in the Quran. So let's break it down. Allah mentions how to do dhikr in multiple places in the Quran, but there's 2 very distinct ones. Allah says, وَاذْكُرْ رَبُّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ. Allah's telling you to do dhikr in your nafs. The presence with Allah happens in the nafs internally. Notice Allah didn't tell you verbalize it, because that's not where dhikr happens. It's not on the tongue. It happens internally. وَاذْكُرْ رَبُّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ, within your nafs, وَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِهِ, and you don't need to verbalize it. So that's number 1, that dhikr is done internally, not necessarily on the lips. The second thing Allah says, وَاذْكُرْ رَبُّكَ وَتَبَتَّلَ تَبْتِيلًا. Pause, because this is such an interesting concept. Allah's telling you when you're doing dhikr, do something called tabattul. The word tabattul literally means to cut off, to be partially cut off from something. So when you're doing dhikr, number 1, you're doing it internally, but at the same time, you're kind of disconnected from everything except the presence of Allah. But what are you doing tabattul from? What are you cutting yourself from? Stay with me now, because wallahi, this changed my own life so much, and inshallah it's gonna change yours, because I guarantee you, man, you have the same problem. 99.999% of your own personal issues happen because of your own thoughts. When Allah says لا يغير الله قوما حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم, that Allah doesn't change your outside conditions until you change ما بأنفسهم, what's in your nafs, the contents of your nafs. Why did Allah say that specifically? Because what's in your nafs, the contents of your nafs, your thoughts, your emotions and stuff like that, your perceptions, your narrative, that's what results in your action, and your actions are what causes what happens on the outside. Yes, Allah sometimes changes outside circumstances to change you too, but in this dunya law that Allah mentioned here is that the inside is what causes the outside. Depending on the quality of the thoughts or whatever is happening in your nafs that is running on the inside, this is what causes the outside. You can take 2 people and you put them in the exact situation. Take 2 people and put them both in a palace, in a beautiful house. And wallahi man, I guarantee you, one of them is gonna find flaws in the palace, the other one is gonna be absolutely grateful. See, the palace itself didn't change. The outside circumstances didn't change. It's what's happening in the nafs of the person that determined whether they're thankful for the palace or not. And take that example of the palace and bring many examples similar to it. So the contents of your nafs, your thoughts, your emotions, what's happening, what's running on the inside is what causes you to see things differently and to act differently, and also from Allah's end, He also changes things based on that. So let's circle back to the concept of dhikr, and what when you're doing tabattul, when you're doing dhikr and you're doing tabattul, you're cutting off from something. What are you cutting off from exactly? Well, the Prophet ﷺ said it in one of the most powerful hadith I ever came across. You're cutting off when you're being present with Allah and you're only thinking about Allah. What are you cutting yourself off from? Al-ham, al-hazan, al-ajaz, al-kasal, al-jubn, wal-bukhl. To summarize all of these, and I can, inshallah, I'll make a video about those in detail, but to summarize all of these things that the Prophet ﷺ talked about, essentially what it is thoughts of you anticipating something bad that's going to happen later, or thoughts about you being sad about something that happened in the past. When you're about to do anything, you're walking on the street, you're about to sit down and study, you're doing something with your business, you're doing anything in dunya in general, thoughts, destructive thoughts are gonna pop up. Thoughts of maybe this is not gonna work out. Maybe this person is gonna think this about me. Maybe I'm gonna fail this because I failed this in the past. Random destructive thoughts. And when the contents of your nafs, when your nafs is saturated with these form of thoughts, number one, you're outside of dhikr. You can't be thinking of Allah and at the same time thinking about these things. The main driver of your heart cannot be Allah and fear at the same time. They both don't go together. At the same time, your perception of things outside you, when you're thinking the main narrative that is going on in your mind is, for example, everyone around me is gonna hurt, it wants to hurt me, for example, or the people that I'm sitting with are judging me negatively. Like, you don't know that. You're guessing, you're anticipating that. These are corrupted contents of your nafs. And when you live by those, well, number one, you're away from Allah in that moment. You're not really present with Allah. You're not really doing dhikr. But at the same time, your actions are going to correlate with that. Your actions are going to be awkward. You're going to be very hesitant. You're not going to move forward in anything. But when you do dhikr, on the other hand, like for example, when we say Allahu Akbar, the word Allahu Akbar, what does it mean? It means it's a form of dhikr. It's Allah is greater. You don't need to say it outside. You can really like pause and kind of disconnect from your thoughts a little bit. And please try that with me right now. Take a moment, pause, close your eyes if you want. And then in your heart, like get your attention back towards your heart. This is called wijha. I'll talk about it in a different video. But you can, essentially your attention or your nafs, you can direct it in different places. Retract that attention back inside your heart. And then repeat Allahu Akbar internally. The word Allahu Akbar is that literally means Allah is greater. But it's an incomplete sentence. Allah is greater than what? Anything that is happening internally from the things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. Any thought of, I'm worried that this is going to happen. I'm kind of sad that this person told me this back then. I'm kind of upset that I'm falling behind in my studies or something like that. When you internally say Allahu Akbar, what you're doing is that you're shrinking that thought and you're magnifying Allahu Akbar. Literally, Allah is greater. That thought is greater to you. When you're walking on the street and you're doing dhikr, again, you don't need to verbalize it, but internally like Allah Rabbi, Allah is my Rabb and He Rabbin Nas. There's a whole verse on that. You're walking around and you're not thinking, when you're present with that idea that Allah is my Rabb and He's Rabbin Nas, you're not really going to be concerned by other people. You're just going to be moving. Because if you disconnect from that and you start thinking that, oh, actually people have influence over me, well, you deviated from the idea that nothing can touch you except Allah if He wills it. I'm kind of having a hard time conveying the idea here. I hope you got it. I'm kind of speaking off script here, but I'm trying to convey the idea exactly to you. Is that when you're present with Allah, the rest of the destructive thoughts fade away. But when you're present with either Allahu Akbar or that there's La ilaha illallah, that there's no God except Allah and nothing can touch me except Allah. If you're present with istighfar, like astaghfirullah, you kind of internally cleanse what's happening on the inside. Like when you do that, it's very difficult to be trampled in dunya. Because your power source now is that I'm with Allah and Allah is with me. Everything else becomes irrelevant or secondary. I hope the idea came across better than I expect. Inshallah, I'll expand on this concept more, but just understand that when you're present with Allah in this moment, even just the thought that Allah's with me right now, that in itself dissolves a lot of the destructive thoughts that come over. Overall, Allahu Alam. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments.